In 1994, one of the most beloved and influential fighting game franchises was born. Tekken burst its way into the arcades, and then exclusively onto the PlayStation the following year. Respected for its authenticity, and at the time realistic looking visuals, it stormed the fighting game market, and to this day still remains the king of Iron Fist. That's what Tekken translates to, by the way, Iron Fist. Yep, research. As of the beginning of 2013, for over 18 years, the Tekken franchise has had 6 main installments and several just as impressive spin-off titles. It holds many Guinness World Records, including the best-selling fighting game series for PlayStation consoles. This franchise, as a whole, has sold over 33 million copies worldwide. The breadth of this series is remarkable. It has spawned 2 animated movies and a live-action film, spin-offs by the barrow load, and famous characters that have gone on to star in other games. So there's got to be a reason why it's huge. There's a reason why Tekken Tag Tournament sold 840,000 copies in its first month. But why is it so popular, so well renowned? Well, let's find out. Let's look back at where Tekken came from and how the series has improved over time, and why it's still as influential and important as it is today. It's time for something revisited. The story of the Tekken series is very long-winded, and it's not the greatest quality of literature. While it would be nice to give you an impression of the series storyline, there really isn't any need. All you need to know about the story of the games is that they are concerned with and set around a tournament called the King of Iron Fist Tournament. And this guy threw his son into a volcano to literally bring out the devil in him, so let's not even go there. Story isn't the key thing that drew players to the series. What made love at first sight for gamers is the gameplay and the graphics. You could say that all Tekken games have, first and foremost, put the gameplay and presentation over everything else. Virtua Fighter 2, 1994. That's funny. I could have sworn this was a Tekken retrospective. No, it seems that this is actually meant to be here. Tekken was born from where all good 3D fighting game franchises started from. Virtua Fighter 2 is indisputably responsible for games such as Tekken, Soul Blade, Battle Arena Toshinden, and Dead or Alive. The first, the best, the most well-known and highly revered of 3D fighting game franchises, Virtua Fighter introduced the mechanics and systems that have been employed by everyone ever since. Just how popular was Virtua Fighter 2? It appeared in an episode of The X-Files, that's how popular. This game was a big draw back in the day, bringing players to the arcades in droves. No fighting game had ever looked this good, or felt this good. Companies knew it. They saw the success and they wanted some of it. Who could blame them? Tekken, 1995. I was introduced to the series some time after this game was released, and this is the first time I've ever played it. Immediate first impressions of this game remind me of Virtua Fighter 2, the memorable second installment in Sega's age-old and illustrious fighting game franchise. This could be, if you strip the name away, a Virtua Fighter game rather than something of its own, but at the same time, the slower, tactical nature of Tekken and the emphasis on deception and skill are already present in the original Tekken game. Still, a bunch of fighters take part in a worldwide fighting tournament, just like Virtua Fighter, in turn, just like Street Fighter, which are all following the model of Weird Tyrant hosts international fighting tournament a la the Bruce Lee classic Enter the Dragon, just with varying stages of supernatural phenomena. Tekken's main innovation is that instead of having the traditional light and heavy button attacks, each button represents a character's limb. Left arm, left leg, and right leg. This method was chosen so that onlookers watching the game being played could be learning the moves simply by watching which arm or leg strikes next. This is the essence of Tekken, which has stayed true throughout the entire series. In the arcade version of Tekken, the roster of characters isn't too impressive, as Virtua Fighter 2 had 2 more in the base roster. However, the PlayStation version of Tekken has unlockable sub-bosses which flesh it out considerably more. Overall, there are 18 characters in the PlayStation version of Tekken. You can unlock the boss characters from the arcade version in the home release, including Heihachi himself. For a first installment in a fighting game series, a roster of almost 20 is impressive, especially considering the time in which this game was released. The first 8 playable characters throughout the whole of the Tekken franchise are Nina Williams, King, Paul Phoenix, Michelle Chang, Yoshimitsu, Kazuya Mishima, Bruce Lee, Martial Law, and Jack. All of them are iconic and easily recognizable by players of this series. Paul, Yoshimitsu, and Nina have appeared in every entry in the Tekken series, and technically, so has King. However, King retired. His adopted son took that title and has been playable since Tekken 3 and onwards. As you might expect, this is the most primitive entry in this 3D fighting game series. Being the first Tekken game, not every feature we've come to appreciate is here. The main thing I notice, having been introduced later in the series, is the lack of particular rolling maneuvers. This is what I mostly rely on when it comes to Tekken. Because of that, a lot of moves aren't present either. Combos are there, and there are plenty of moves to master, but the game feels slow. You can't juggle enemies in the air unless you're performing particular combo moves, and tackling an enemy doesn't do any more damage than a normal attack would. Personally, I really don't like the first game. It's slow, sluggish, and has a certain clunky nature that immediately turns me off. However, to be fair, I've reverted back and didn't experience it as those who played it back then did. Let's find out what my friends think. Tekken has touched the hearts of millions, and many people I know personally have also come to appreciate the Tekken series.
Tekken. I actually have some really fond memories of, well, Tekken 1 and Tekken 2. A little bit of trivia for you, although Alien Trilogy was probably the first game I saw being played on the PlayStation 1 when I went around a friend's house and he had one. That was the first game I ever actually saw on the system, but the first game I actually played was the first Tekken, and the first character I ever played as was Kazuya. I didn't really know the controls, and I was just using, a lot of the time I was using just Kazuya's default circle kick. And it was really funny because I ended up beating this guy, and he got really angry, to the point where my friend was nearly rolling on the floor in fits of giggles just because how wound up. Because I remember he was like, oh, you know, I'm gonna kick this kid's ass. And every time he'd try and get near me, I'd run his kick. Every time he'd try and jump at me, I'd run his kick. I know, I hate that, but it was really funny because he got really annoyed. And I was just like, I don't care, I won. I think Paul Phoenix was a favourite of mine for quite a while because he had some really strong attacks. If you could pull them off, you could destroy people. But yeah, I mean, the graphics blew me away, but it was also the sound, because obviously, you know, I'd only ever played the Mega Drive or the Super Nintendo, and there was all 16-bit MIDI files for music. So, you know, CD quality audio was coming out of Tekken, and just completely blew me away. I mean, I loved that game to death. I mean, I played it constantly, and obviously I got frustrated with it because it can get really difficult, especially facing Heihachi. But I unlocked, most of the characters. I never really liked, I never liked Jack. Was the name of the Jack? Yeah, the robot, because he was just so slow and shit. You can hit hard. You could really hit hard, but. I liked Yoshimitsu just because he was quite goofy. But like I said, Full Phoenix was awesome. So was Kazuya. Most of them were, really. I mean, most characters could kick your ass. If you don't take them seriously, they will. The idea of a pro wrestler entering a tournament, an actual fighting tournament, and still putting off like wrestling moves, and all these characters taking really good bumps. It's really silly.
There are a few secrets in the original Tekken. Perhaps the most well known concerns the Galaga minigame that starts playing when you boot up the game.
I know that if you shoot down all of the ships without them flying off, you get every single ship, then you unlock Devil Kazuya, and you just have to push the start button, I think it is, on Kazuya, and you get a devil costume. But I never got that.
Devil doesn't have any different moves, and has no differences in his stats or health. Still, it's an impressive little badge to show off. Getting a perfect is no easy feat. There's also another interesting thing about the Galaga bonus game. Holding a certain button combination allows you to play 2-player Galaga instead of 1 player, which is cool. There are button combinations that change which character appears in the screen demo. It is about as exciting as it sounds. You can change one of the combatants on the screen demo, yippee. It's interesting to discover the little secrets here and there. Namco weren't forced to include them. It's a nice touch, and even at this stage, highlights the beginnings of a series known for its quirks. Tekken was the very first PlayStation game to sell 1 million units. The accolades it received from gaming news outlets were many, and in my opinion justified. When we look at the second Tekken, we're going to see more of the series' own soul and theme start flooding through into the games. But even at this stage, the character selection and the theme of the game are peculiar. It's just going to get weirder from here on though.
You lose. Continue. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Game over.